The History of Print Press in America by Steve, Andrew, and Jake. The following are some key points and dates in print media history. While printing first started in Europe with Johannes Gutenberg's press, the first occurrence of printing in the United States was in 1478, where printing began at Oxford University. The first book printed in America was called Expositio in Symbolisme Apostolorum. In 1584, the University Press at Cambridge began operation. In 1639, the Bay Psalm Book was the first book printed in American colonies. In 1690, Public Occurrences was printed in Boston. The first paper mill was in operation in 1691. Poor Richard's Almanac, written by Benjamin Franklin, was released in 1733. A Dictionary of the English Language by Samuel Johnson was released in 1755. In 1810, The History of Printing in America by Isaiah Thomas was released. Louis Braille invented reading for the blind in 1829. An improved printing press called the rotary printing press came out in 1846, and it could print around curved items such as cylinders. And in 1902, the first air conditioner was actually invented when Willis Carrier was trying to make a dehumidifier for New York. During the Industrial Revolution in the 1850s, there were giant presses that could produce 10,000 complete papers per hour. The Civil War also had a large effect on journalism in many ways. War photography showed the detail from war that stories could not do. It showed graphic images that nobody could have seen before. The use of the telegraph was a new way to get information out during the war. It led to more concise journalism and stories because the longer the telegraph, the more expensive it was. The inverted pyramid also came out of the Civil War. This type of journalism / sharing news was key to sending information, usually through telegrams. The most important information was listed first, such as who, what, when, where, why, and how, because it saved money and showed the key details first so that a response or decision could be made quicker during the war. Two of the most prominent people in journalism history were Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst. Pulitzer created sports and women's pages for the newspaper. He introduced banner headlines and pictures for the front page. Pulitzer Prize was named after him. Hearst was the son of a millionaire and took over the San Francisco Examiner, and soon realized that the California news market wasn't big enough for him, so he moved to New York and bought the New York. Yellow journalism was a type of newspaper reporting that pushed exciting stories over factual ones. It came from a popular cartoon strip called Hogan's Alley, drawn by Richard Outcault, and it was published in Pulitzer's New York World. The main character eventually became known as the Yellow Kid. In 1896, Hearst hired Outcault away from Pulitzer and the war began. The USS Maine exploded in 1898 in Cuba, and both Hearst and Pulitzer's newspapers ran a story about an enemy blowing it up, but actually a mine caused the explosion. This was a large factor that started the Spanish-American War.
Right around the turn of the century, the distribution of pictures became an integral part in printed media. The first piece of technology that allowed the transfer of pictures through the wire was the telediagraph in 1895. It sent shellac-on-foil originals but was unsuccessful due to high costs and poor picture quality. In 1913, Swiss photographer Eduard Belin improved on the design, creating the Belinograph. His machine used pre-existing phone lines to send photocell copies of images. This practice eventually grew into the company AT&T. Around the start of World War II, syndication of media emerged, making it possible for text and images to be sent all over the world between companies, drastically increasing the amount of coverage a print company could ascertain. This means pictures taken during D-Day could end up in France, Germany, England, and the US within a matter of days. Syndication of companies also allowed for comic strips, editorials, and advice and opinion columns to spring up in print media. With the mass production of newspapers and high demand, companies turned to local youth to distribute their product. Paperboys became a poster child position for young Americans who wanted to make money. Studies have even shown that people who were paperboys in their youth were more likely to be successful in life because a work ethic was instilled at such a young age. With the popularization of radio in the late 20s and later television in the 50s, the newspaper began its long, slow decline. More information could spread faster, creating an appealing alternative to reading through pages for your news. The influence of audio and visual media became even more inflated due to advertisers seeing a greater market over the airwaves than on printed page.
Now we want to get into what news has turned into in today's world. Newspapers are beginning to become a thing of the past, and all media is starting to be able to be consumed online. CompuServe was the first use of surfing the web in the 1970s, and 40 years later, we are now using social media to find our news. There are many different social media platforms that we can use to find all of our news on the web. In about 2010, the media started to see a major switch from where the news content was being read at 34% online and only 31% was being read through newspapers. This was a major change for a world that had never really used online. The world today is revolving around technology and social media, and around the year 2012, social media started to have a bigger role in the way that we got our news. When using social media, Facebook was the biggest source to start with of sharing news posts, and many people still use that form today. Roughly 64% of Americans get news from Facebook. The reason that we are seeing a change in where we get our news from today is because everyone can get it through cell phones and iPads that have internet access in almost any place at any time. And simply more convenient to get, so why would people not just use the internet to get their news? It's also free on a lot of sites, so it beats paying for a newspaper when you can get it at the touch of your finger at any moment or any time. Newspapers today have now had to make major adjustments by posting all of their content online as well as in their daily newspapers. Enough people still buy daily newspapers because some people still simply prefer to read from the paper rather than online. But even every major news company has to continue to make adjustments to whatever is thrown at them to keep up and compete with everything else. It's an ever-changing process in the news world today. In the future, the news world will continue to have changes, and only time can really tell how long the print press and newspapers will survive. What we do know is that the online news will continue and be very competitive moving forward. I predict that the print press will eventually be moved to all online content, but for now, at least it will still be used, and only people of our generation and others moving forward will know for sure what the future holds for our newspapers and our online media content.